So welcome, welcome,
Fabulous.
welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for popping on, joining us for this conversation. This is part three. This is the business and leadership edition of this Sacred Soul series, Soul Contract series. So tongue twister. Still haven't gotten it yet. Third week. We'll see how we do on week four or day four. But we are here with the amazing Kim Arnson, who is an intuitive coach, business coach. She helps you take your business from six figures, five figures, whatever, wherever you start to multi six figures. So she has been doing this for a very long time. I'll let you, tell your little thing. But just to get people started. And we also have my spiritual mentor, my kombucha mama. Like, I come from her in a lot of ways. Nikki Novo. She is the owner, founder, president, goddess of her company, Nikki Novo Co. She's also a published author twice, and just like killing it in the intuitive game. She's literally the being of which many of my soul sisters have been birthed. So, Kim, why don't you tell us a little bit more about who you are and how business and entrepreneurship came into your life?
Sure. So I am a conscious business and growth mentor. Essentially, my most empowered clients that I serve that like have the most success in my world are individuals who are already at around the six-figure mark, and I take them to multi six figures. We do a mix of both strategy and structure, masculine energy, all healthy masculine energy, mixed with the energetics, the feminine approach, this intuitive nature, what's alive and what wants to be born through us. And I kind of marry those together. My coach today just referred to me. She's like, "You're just like the woo meets the strategy. Like that's your superpower." And I was like, yes, that makes perfect sense. That is me. And so that's what I do currently. Business and entrepreneurship, though, truth be told, I went to college to become an elementary education teacher. This is why I'm so good at mapping out offers and making sure that our clients are actually getting results at certain benchmarks and indicators and all sorts of things. And after college, I literally could not find a job. It was like right after the 2008 crash. And so I couldn't find a teaching position. And I was hired as a preschool teacher. And in 1 year, I became the director of the school. And it was a not for profit school. So I literally took a dying school that was making $80,000 a year. And in year one, I took them to $225,000. And so that is when I was immersed into business at the ripe old age of 22 years old. And I did that for 11 years. And then I had like the deepest spiritual awakening when I had to lay myself off from that career when COVID happened. I pivoted, and then I went into spiritual life coaching thinking like, okay, this is my specialty. And I did that. And then once I had pretty immediate success with that, I was like, oh, wait a minute, no, Kim, let's sit back and realize what your specialty actually is and helping those that have a different specialty. This is my genius. And so I love to infuse my genius in those that have like true roots in coaching and in healing and in expansion and all of the things. So that's a little bit about me and my journey. And here I am. So thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Nikki, please.
Thank you so much for having me, Abby. And Kim, it was so nice to hear about your
Yes.
background. So cool and so beautiful. I'm always like trying to push my 19-year-old to like start a Montessori school. Like I guess like I have this like dream in me that like I don't want to start the school, but I would like somebody to
Yeah.
start like a full school. And like my daughter's like, I'm smarter than that. No, thank you. I'm not gonna chain myself to whatever. So anyways, I love that story. Hi everybody. I am Nikki Novo, and like what an honor to be like what is that? What is it in the kombucha? It's called the SCOBY. The
I
SCOBY.
have no idea what
Yes, it's
the
called
little
because
plant
Benny
is, but
makes.
like,
Yes, because Benny makes kombucha, my husband. So I know it's like the SCOBY or like the starter dough from like sourdough. Like that's literally like what I am. I love that.
yes.
Thank you. Um, so I'm master intuitive and spiritual mentor, most known for my soul readings, which is a reading I developed about 10 years ago. And yeah, really turned into kind of a sold out. I have over 1,500 people on my wait list to get readings with me, which is like still an honor, and blown away by that. I created a pretty popular course in the program in the spiritual world called Soul Reading Method, where people like where I birth and help birth beautiful people like Abby and a lot of amazing healers that I'm so proud of. It originally called Soul Teacher and then turned into Soul Reading Method. And yeah, I've done a few bodies of work. My background is I was a publicist in the film industry for a while, and then I moved into being an editor. So I was an editor at like MSN and Condé Nast and all these kind of big places. Had my spiritual awakening after being dumped by a guy that I thought I was going to marry, and like I needed to see a psychic, and that psychic like changed my life. And then just really started off in the blogging world, doing self-help writing, spiritual writing. My first body of work, as I like to call it, was really about dating through a spiritual lens. And that was my first book, which is called The Final Swipe. And then I moved more into the intuitive, more metaphysical, spirit guides, reading energy, got really like geeky and wizardy about all that kind of stuff, which is where soul reading was birthed from. And then I also have a third body of work, which is really about living intuitively, which is called Soul Led Living. I just released that book in the summer, and I have a popular podcast called Soul Led Living with Nikki. And there's also a business edition in case anybody's interested. On Thursdays, I talk about business. So I believe that I'm super geeky about the work, although like I have a lot of Cancer energy. My South Node is in Capricorn, so I've been running businesses for many lifetimes. My family is Cuban, and pretty much all Cubans are entrepreneurs because that's like how you get by over there. And my father is a physician, but I grew up watching him run his own practice. So a lot of me kind of intuitively knowing what to do with a spiritual practice was really inspired by the do's and the don'ts that my dad did. And I think that's part of like kind of what made me very successful as a practitioner, and then ultimately like learned how to scale the practitioner business. But I do believe practitioners should start off with bodies of work. So that's why I talk about bodies of work, because I do move. I've had a few in my career, and I think that's part of like what makes a practitioner successful, and ultimately can grow to be more of that like online spiritual teacher, which is definitely where I'm at. So I'm really grateful to be here and excited to answer any questions that come through.
Yay. So we're gonna just dive in. I have a question for each of you, and I'm super excited to see how you guys feel about it. The question, pretty simple. Do you feel like you're a trailblazer? Nikki, can we start with you?
Yeah, oh my gosh, that question, of course. Yes, I definitely, I wrote about that actually a lot in my most recent book, in Soul Led Living. And I think that's what's really hard about the work that we do. Like, there's not really a blueprint. I think the world is changing so much. So it's hard to kind of try to follow anybody ahead of you. Even if you want to, it's like some days that you're like, yes, please give me like a blueprint. There's like nothing really available right now. And I think we're really coming from a place now of like following what our soul is really calling us to do, which is going to be unique. There might be definitely expanders, like people that kind of like inspire you. But I think we're still in this, we're moving into this place where we really got to do it our own way. And definitely, a trailblazer in my own family, right? Like I come from a family of doctors, because that's why I resonate with Abby and like the work that she comes from, because that's like the world I grew up in. My brothers, my sister-in-laws, my dad, they're all doctors. So definitely trailblazing, but kind of being still being a healer, but doing it a different way. And I don't know, I think that's like the only way to do it these days.
What for you really like sticks out for you in your business for why that is? Like, what is it that you feel like you're doing differently? Because let's be honest, a lot of people I think want to be trailblazers. I like because number one, I don't think they understand it. They don't understand like how hard it is. They don't understand what that entails, the sacrifice, the pain, the loneliness that comes with being a trailblazer. So they have this like idealized thought in their mind of like, I want to be the first. And they don't understand how hard being the first is. But I think they also don't understand that you can be a trailblazer in like small ways, like that you could be doing something in your business that maybe it's your entire business that's brand new. Maybe it's how you market, maybe it's how you actually do your work, but that doesn't, it's just a piece of you that is, and it's not the whole of you that is. So do you feel like you fit into one of those categories? Do you feel like you're a trailblazer because you break those categories and there's a third one that I'm missing?
Yeah, I mean, to me, trailblazer is like really following your own path. And I think, if you think about trails, like there might be a trail like right next to mine that looks very similar, but I'm just taking a few different turns. So I think we're still kind of on the same land, being birthed from the same place. I didn't invent the psychic industry. Like the psychic industry, like I said, one of the first, I had a psychic reading, although I was raised Catholic and super afraid of any sort of psychic reading. I met a psychic woman who did a reading on me, and I was like, oh my gosh, and I got hooked, and I went to a bunch of readings. So this industry and this world has always existed. And I think what is more trailblazing about me is that I was like, all right, guys, we can't like be doing readings for $50 on a plastic chair in back of like an alley, because that's where I would get readings. Like in Miami, you would go to the Santera, and it was like somewhere in Hialeah, and you're like in a back alley getting a reading for $50. And I was like, I really think this is important work. And I would say, like, it's amazing. It's crazy sometimes that I have this wait list and I charge a lot, and I really feel like what I did was I professionalized an industry that wasn't, or I was part of it, because obviously I'm not the only one, but I was part of professionalizing an industry that has always existed, but brought it into the forefront and said like, hey, this is like a worthy investment. I think we've all been doing that as healers lately, that these have been practices that have been around forever, but they were practices that were done, in back alleys, dark mat, kind of seen as witch work, all that kind of stuff. And collectively, we've brought it to the light and started to charge accordingly. So I would say that that's like a big part of the trailblazing, and then trailblazing in my family, right? Like I was raised to obviously be a professional. And it was very scary for me to be like, I'm going to leave this like media career that was very flashy, and I kept climbing the ladder, not become a doctor, not marry a doctor, right? I married another entrepreneur. And I think you can be a trailblazer in your own family, which is definitely tricky because you look like you're doing a very strange thing until it works. I had this one good girlfriend who is a creator of a really big workout company in Miami. And when I needed help, I mean, it's always important to have other entrepreneurs that are trailblazing, but they're ahead of you, right? It's like you guys are, walking side by side. And I was like, listen, I'm struggling, whatever, here at the business. And she's like, I'm like, I feel like a crazy person. Like what I'm doing is not really working. And I don't even know why I'm talking about spirit guides. Like I'm literally a fashion and beauty editor. This is so strange. And she's like, Nikki, listen, she's like, if you're not doing something crazy and people are not making fun of you, like you're really not doing anything. And she's like, I won't wait until the day everybody starts like reaching out to you and asking you for your crazy shit. She's like, I used to invite people to come dance and like wear high heels and do these like twerking moves, and like nobody wanted to come. And now, of course, now that I'm a big deal and that I'm sold out, like people are interested. And that does eventually happen. And that is hard, because you do feel like a crazy person when you're doing something that has like never been done before, or at least never been done in that way. So you're trailblazing, but there's definitely people trailblazing alongside of you. So I don't think you don't have to be like completely alone, and it's important to have those people in your backpack for sure.
Yeah. Community being a huge deal pretty much anywhere, right? Kim, what about you? Do you feel like you're a trailblazer?
I do. In a variety of ways though. And I love like Nikki's comments about family trailblazing, because truthfully, like that's where I recognized I was a trailblazer first. It wasn't outside of anything else. It was just in the way. And I'm a human design reflector. So like quite literally my entire life, I have been a little different. And so I've always felt outside of the norm, right? And so even within my family dynamic, I was like, I love you all. Like, I quite love you all, but like, none of you are doing anything I want to do, or like the path you're following doesn't make sense for me. It's just not landing. And so for me, like, even like, think about it, like when I first, my first career at 22 years old to become a director of a preschool, that was a large, a large preschool in a very affluent area. I had to like automatically become this person that was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna turn this preschool into the hot spot in this area. Like, it's happening no matter what. Come hell or high water, we're doing it. And we did it, right? We actualized that to existence, manifested it literally like that, and it was amazing. But now, like, the trailblazing work that I feel like I'm doing, and this is just like my own truth, is I feel like this coaching industry, if we don't get a handle on focusing on how we serve our people, that's a big component of the work that I do with my people, is deepening their relationship to their work in the first place, and then grounding it. I always say, like, we're not playing star tennis with our messaging and marketing. You can play tennis, you can play star tennis, but it's got to be on planet Earth, which means that it just has to land with your ideal client. Like, your ideal client has to understand what you're talking about. Otherwise, it's going to be an uphill battle. And so for me, I think that this industry, as beautiful as it is, like, I quite literally love every inch of the healing and the self-help and the coach industry. Like, I'm here for it all. But also, if we don't have evidence that we can support our people and that we can get people results, and if we don't have evidence that we're truly serving our people, what are we doing? Right? And so, like, that's the space for me where I see a lot of individuals who came into this space because there's a sexy little lucrative note that is hidden inside of all of it, both in the spiritual community and both in the coaching industry. One, if you just believe and you trust your soul and, like, you don't have to do anything, you're going to become a millionaire. Like, that's it. Like, God's source universe is just going to drop it into your lap. Like, you don't have to do anything. That is literally a TikTok I watched before I became a spiritual life coach. Okay. So that one, I don't like that. Two, the other side to that coin is recognizing that there's a lot of flashiness in the coaching industry. I'm watching people on the daily hit $100,000 months. I'm watching people hit 8 figures, 9 figures, and they're selling the way they built their business to newbie entrepreneurs, which those don't connect. What they're doing at that level does not work for this human at this level. And yes, it is our responsibility as conscious beings to be able to discern through content to go, is this advice for me? Like, is this actually going to push the needle in my business, in my life? Or maybe does that come further down the line? Yes, that's up to us. But also, it is up to you as a business owner to have clear intentions and clear messaging that this is the work that is meant for this type of individual, so that your people, I use the term win, so that your people win in your world. Like, that to me is why we came into this period. Like, I came into coaching / healing at first because I wanted to serve people. I wanted to help people. I wanted people to have real life transformations. And what I was finding is that when my messaging was so, like, vague and so open and so fluffy, like, it was, I'm going to say it from this way, it was like literally rooted in, like, just feminine energy, period. Okay. Like, that's what it was. I was calling in a lot of individuals who, truth be told, were not at a level that were ready to win in my world. They didn't build up that consistency muscle in themselves, or that self-trust muscle. And so no matter what we were doing yet, they just weren't at the level quite yet. That is my responsibility to clean up, because I want to make sure that everybody that comes into my world, every exchange that I have with money now, it's always out of pleasure and not out of pressure, to where I know I back that person because they back themselves 110%. I know I can help that person because we've had that conversation and enough dialogue to go, yes, I know the level that you're at. I know what we need to do. I know where we can move. And in addition to that, there's a lot of questions I need to ask you, because I need you to find this out too. I need you to uncover it. I need you to see what your process is. I need you to tell me how you get your people results and how you serve them. And so it's this beautiful little dance. And to me, there is not many people in the coaching industry, especially from a business coaching lens, that is talking about results. The reason as to why is because a lot of coaches are not getting their people results. And that is the truth. Point blank, end of story. And so for me, as a trailblazer in this space, yeah, I'm creating a movement of coaches and healers who are 100% like, no, bitch, I know how to get people results. Let's go. Let's do this. Like, I 100% back my stuff. And so because of that, yeah, I'm like, come on in. Let's do it. Let's do it together. Let's join this movement of, yes, Nicole, mic drop. Yes. Let's join this movement where we are all results driven together, where we all can back our work at such a deep level, and that's when we switch. And I talk a lot about masculine and feminine. Like, that's where I have a very feminine based sales approach. I don't hard sell anymore, because I let my content, I let my conviction, I let my, what I know to be true about my business live at the forefront in my message. And then I literally like kick back and I'm like, here's the door. It's open. If you want that support, come on in. I'm ready. And that's all that has to happen. And so for me, it's an entirely different way than what a good chunk of the business coaches, especially feminine energetic business coaches, how they talk about business in the first place. So that trailblazing energy is absolutely here in this industry. But it started with, truth be told, like being the black sheep. I've been a black sheep my whole life, and it's cool. It's okay. It sucks sometimes. It's hard, you know, like, and they say, what do they say? Like, they say it's always lonely at the top, right? I mean, it's not that it's lonely, because I put myself in circles of people who are exactly where I'm at, or below me, or beneath me, or wherever the hell they are. They're in this land. So it's like supporting yourself with a network of individuals that are in this arena together. Then it's not lonely. But in my personal life, I don't know any other entrepreneurs. Nobody in my family is doing this. I do come from a really long line of, when you brought up like the Catholic religious background, Nikki, I do come from a really long line of priests and nuns. So I do think that that is quite like some of my energetic components and intuitiveness and reading energy. I'm like, oh, okay, that's where that comes from. That's where that stems from. And I do have some entrepreneurs like in removed families, but nobody I ever grew up with, nobody I surrounded myself with. So really, truly, from that trailblazing-esque, I'm the first one that I've witnessed in myself and in my life to go this route. But now I see that there's millions of us literally together doing this. And that to me is like, that's what lights a fire under my butt, is because there's so many of us together that are creating this paradigm shift. We're literally shifting the way that people exchange money, how they work, what's possible for them. And that to me is what activates me most. Like, could you literally, I know this is so corny, but I don't care. Could you imagine a world where like literally we all have geniuses and innate strengths and we all just exchange money for it together, and that's how we all work? Like, what? Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Teach me. Yes, I'm in.
Right. I love that how you were talking about like the trailblazing within like honesty in and alignment within your business. And I think this really harkens back to what Nikki, you were talking about how part of what you do is in your like trailblazing aspect is the professionalism of the intuitive community. I absolutely can say 100% that yes, like if somebody asked me what is Nikki like known for, I would have been like, well, yeah, she like birds intuitives, but like for me, especially at this point in my life and in my business, the more important thing I feel like of how, like, why I'm so glad that I came from you in that way is the fact that you did professionally. I don't charge what those like dark room beaded curtain people do. And I speak out about it because of what you taught me and what you teach your students when we ask you guys, when we as a group ask you about business and what it means to be in this. For you, I would assume this was very important, yes? And that's why you decided to do that? Or was there something outside of just its importance that really told you, you know what, we need to move this along. We can't be doing this anymore that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think Thank you, Abby, for like that. It's really beautiful. And I'm like so proud of all the work that you're doing. So thank you for, the shout out. But I think a lot of it comes from like, I went to school, like I studied, I like had a very professional career. So it wasn't like I was gonna like leave this very professional media career to just do these like random readings. Like I knew I was like gonna do it and do it well. And I don't know, I don't think I was thinking like get results, but like how you were saying, Kim, but like I just knew that I was going to dot my I's and like cross my T's basically. So I expected that from myself. And like I trained myself. I worked, like really hard, like just kind of really working like as an athlete and tinkering this one thing that I was doing and tinkering it. And that was it was interesting because I didn't come into my business like knowing that I was going to do readings. That came later. I came into the business like as a blogger, and I would teach workshops, and I was teaching blogging, like was one of the first things that I taught in like 2008, 2010. And it was funny because I think at the beginning of business, I was like throwing a bunch of things at the wall and seeing what would stick, kind of this idea of like, oh, whatever I'm meant to do will like take off, right? And I think we're taught that a bunch for sure. And I guess I was like in that place. And then ultimately I stumbled upon this concept of like doing readings because I was downloading the information by accident in meditation, and I was seeing clients, and I started doing readings on clients. And it was the first thing in my business that caught my attention enough to want to be like really good at it. So it's kind of like the first thing I didn't give up on, because I had done like courses and I had taught other things. I even wrote, like, I tried writing this like book, which was like so horrible. It was like one of the first. So I was just doing a bunch of little things to figure out how this vision that I had of this career, like how it was going to work. Like I had an idea of like what I was meant to be, but I had no idea how I was going to get there. So I threw like a bunch of things at the wall to see what would stick. And I mean, chicken or the egg, like, I mean, we can debate whether I was meant to do like these other things. And I'm not going to really like debate that, but I would say that like I found readings, it was something I like, it caught my attention. It was like a lever that just like kept my focus. And once it kept my focus, somewhere along that process, I realized like, oh, things work in business when you tinker with it enough to make a really great product. Like something switched in my head that I was like, I kept thinking that everything I was doing like just didn't work because it didn't work. And I was like, no, like it's not working because you're like not fixing it. Like you're not taking the feedback, you're not making it, like you're not engineering it basically. Like the product is not good enough because you're just saying like, look, this should be good enough. Like the first rendition should be good enough for you to buy the course, or the first rendition of my book should be good enough for you to read the book. And it's like, none of it was good enough. It was my first trial. So when those things didn't work, I just assumed it was like the thing I was doing, or worse, me, and I would give up on them. But then the readings came along, and it, like I said, caught my attention, and I started to tweak it. And when I started to, what I teach in soul reading method today is like hours and hours. I've read over 800 people. So it's like hours and hours of like doing the same. It's kind of like hours and hours of doing the same recipe. So it's like my cake is bomb, but only because I have like meticulously measured how much sugar and how much flour or whatever to make this perfect cake. So I find like kind of that I found that to be like so crazy and like such a miracle. And I think that by doing that, I professionalized a product that had already existed in the world, right? Like readings had existed. It was a product or a service, whatever you want to call it, but nobody had tinkered with it to the amount that I did. Because if you think of the nature of intuition, it's like the idea that was sold to us for many years was that some people had it and some people didn't, and that it was natural. So therefore, you have a natural talent. You shouldn't have to work on it. And I think, Malcolm Gladwell talks about this. Like he writes about who was he talking about? Tiger Woods, right? Like everybody's like, oh, Tiger Woods, like this amazing athlete. And a lot of people look at amazing athletes and think like, oh, just born with a gift. And really was like, no, if you look at how many hours he logged in, that's what took him from natural talent to like, oh my gosh, like miracle. So that was a game changer for me. And I knew that because I had a natural talent for writing. And then I was like kind of forced into being an editor, and I was uh, mentored a lot, and people like trained me. And I saw for the first time, I was like, I'm like this natural talent. Now I'm like good at it. So that's really what happened with the readings. Like I was, you come in with like natural intuitive gifts, you come in with natural healing gifts, and where you really tip over is when you see yourself as an athlete. Like think that you're playing little league with all your other friends. Only like one or two of the people you start off with in little league are actually going to go pro. And that, like, I was like, I'm going to go pro. So I took like a natural talent and gifts. And what's been so cool about my career is like I've trained so many intuitives. And what has been the coolest thing is to see that you don't even need that much natural talent. Like some of my best students were not my most naturally gifted. They were the ones that were focused enough to like really show up and tweak and try and like never give up, and just kind of like, because they're interested in enough. I don't judge anybody who does like decide like, oh, I don't want to put the hours into the readings, because I'm like, okay, if it interests you enough, like it'll catch your attention, you'll keep doing it. So I don't blame, because I've given up on a lot of things. I don't think we're supposed to stick through with everything. But I thought that was like really, really cool. So because I did that, and then of course I never thought I had an intuition that I was going to like teach young spiritual teachers one day, but it definitely, I've shared this story before, but it definitely came way faster than I thought I was ready for. When I started to teach young intuitives, because they were coming my way, because they were like, they recognized that I was kind of like the first person that had natural intuition, had a method for it, could deliver the same results. So I think for practitioners, anybody who's watching, I really highly believe in finding a recipe that like works, and kind of being like that solid restaurant that you go to. Like the reason you go to the restaurant that you love to go to is because like you're going to get the same experience every single time. You can guarantee the experience. And that is what I did with my readings. Like I can guarantee the same experience every single time because I'm following a very specific I'm following a
That's
very
Kim's like bread
specific
and butter.
recipe. Yeah, like I'm following a very specific recipe that like I created and that I tweaked and whatever. So the proof was in the pudding. People started to come my way and asked me to teach them. And I was not, I always say that Soul Teacher and Soul Reading Method, which is the same program, they created me. Like the teacher that I am today is because of the program. They asked me to teach before I was ready. And Abby will tell you that because she was in one of my early programs and it was a shit show.
Yep.
And they were so generous.
And I told her about it, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like, I mean, listen, we still get that. I'm like 9 classes in and there's always like something to tweak.
All right, everybody, we're going to take a pause. That was part 1 of the Business and Leadership edition of the Soul Contract series. And we are well on our way into the second part. So go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, and share with anyone who you feel like it needs this. Of course, all of the links to how to work with these ladies and the organizations that they are uplifting are all down in the show notes. We will see you in part 2.